Norvel Lee, Howard University student, World War II veteran, Tuskegee Airman, and 1952 Olympian, is an American hero, and you are going to hear this story from author Ken Conklin this afternoon. Welcome to Zoom Into Books. Ken Conklin is a native of Los Angeles and lives in southwestern Virginia. His essays have been published in the Roanoke Times and other publications, and Norvel is his first book. Ken, welcome to Zoom Into Books.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you for having me on. Yes, this is my first book, but I've been writing my entire life, and I've written numerous essays over the years, and actually have a book of poems coming out here soon. I'm originally from Los Angeles, grew up there, and had a long career in the technology industry, and I got to travel the world during that time and have many stories from those travels. Today, I'd want to talk to you about a true journey of a lifetime that I went on in discovering the life of Norvel Lee. And I'm going to do it through a series of slides here. So bear with me for a minute while I load the slides up. So we're back. The story I'm going to tell today, what I'm going to talk about today, is the backstory that created, that really landed this book ended up with this book about Norvel Lee, and the journey that I went on during that book. And it all started with this headline from the Fincastle Herald, which is our weekly newspaper here in Botetourt County. It says, Botetourt County native won Olympic gold in the boxing ring. And while that was a great accomplishment, it was not the only reason to recognize Norvel Lee. And I was curious about that. First of all, Botetourt, that is the correct pronunciation from it, by the way. It looks like it should be different. Anyways, that headline got my curiosity. I wasn't thinking of the book at that time. May have been thinking maybe a little more expanded essay than the article had in it, but I just was a little more curious about what was going to happen. So I did what we all do. I got on the internet and I went to Google and I wrote in Norvel Lee. And not a lot of information came up with that, but I did come across a blog that's still going on today, Boxing Along the Beltway with Gary Digital Williams. And it was about Norvel. It was this was a 2012 edition of the blog. And I found this one that said Beltway Boxing History, Norvel Lee. And as those blogs go, there's a lot of people that come back and comment on it. And I scrolled all the way down to the bottom of those comments, and there was one that said, Gary, thanks so much for this article on my grandfather. Our family would like to respectfully correct your information. And Darren Anderson had her email address on there, and she and I connected. And for the next several months, she and I went back and forth with emails and phone calls, and I got more curious as time went on. And finally, we decided that it would be appropriate for us to come up to the to meet the family and go through some of the archival material that they had stored away there. So my wife Barbara and I drove up to Maryland and got together with members of the family. On the left is Danielle Anderson, Norvel's granddaughter. In the middle is Margaret Russell, Norvel's sister-in-law. And then there's Darren Anderson, Norvel's granddaughter. And this was the first of several get-togethers that we had with the family, where we sat down and went through lots and lots of artifacts. There's a jacket from his 1948 boxing, his U.S. Olympic team. But there was so much more in those archives that said that he was much, much more than just an Olympic boxer. And it got my curiosity going more and more as I looked at this. And so that really kicked off this journey. And as I said, it was a journey of a lifetime discovering this information. In fact, this journey could be a book in itself. Here's one of the things we got from the file was his birth certificate. It shows that he was born in Boudilier County, Virginia. It's the same county that I live in. His mother was Georgia Anna Ray. Everyone called her Georgiana. And his father was James Jackson Lee. He worked on the railroads up in Clifton Forge, which is the county just north of us. This is the Rising Mount Zion Baptist Church, just north of Eagle Rock, Virginia, in Gala. This was the center of their community up there. All their social activities and all were centered around this particular church. The book has several scenes in it that are based at this book, at this church. Next to the church is a cemetery. In that cemetery is the gravesite of Norvel Lee's mother. I learned from the family that she valued education. Education was her #1 priority for her children. She also valued community service and the church. Here are, on the left is Norvel Lee. In the middle is his sister Edna, and next to her is James Lee. They also have a younger brother, George, whom I will be talking about later. All three of these, following their mother's strict advice to be educated, all three of these people received college degrees. Here in Boudilier County, I reached out to a number of different organizations, the Boudilier County Historical Society. Up in Allegheny County, I reached out to the C&O Railroad Archives. The railroad industry in these parts, especially for this community, played a big part in their lives and employed a lot of the people in northern Boudilier County at the time. I also reached out to the Boudilier County Board of Education and asked if they might have any records from the 1940s, and they did. This is during the time of Jim Crow. Norvel went to the Academy Hill School for Negroes in Fincastle, and they had these beautifully kept records. They put me in a room, brought these files out, and I went through them, and they were just a treasure. Some of them, you can see, I took this one as an example, and I learned from the family that Norvel was an excellent student and took school seriously. And you can see here that his grades, he had all A's on this particular card. And he also, when I went through a lot of these, it was noted that he had a stammer, and the teachers were always concerned about his stammer. And when I talked to the family, that was one of the first things they mentioned about him was his stammer. And I also interviewed some of his friends as time went on, and that's always one of the first things they noted about him. It was really part of his makeup and it's part of his being. Norvel graduated top of his class. He was chosen to go to Tuskegee Airfield. He was chosen to go through flight training. This was 1943, during the middle of World War II. And he went to Tuskegee and earned his wings there. And I have a chapter on that in the book, and did not get assigned to a unit didn't get assigned to a flying unit because of his stammer. So instead, he went down to Kingsland Air Force Base in Mississippi, waiting to see what was next, and saw and met Robert Jackson, who is Margaret Russell's brother and the brother of his future wife, Leslie. But that's where they first met there. And then from there, he was sent overseas to the South Pacific, and he was in the ending part of World War II in the South Pacific, as was Robert Jackson. When he came home, he enrolled in Howard University in Washington, D.C. I've been on this campus. It's a beautiful, beautiful campus in the heart of a major city. And I did some of my research in their archive library. I'll talk about that in a moment. But there he re-met Robert Jackson from Robert Jackson had always wanted to go to Howard, so he enrolled there. Norvel enrolled there, and they met up again. This is a couple years now after the war. And Norvel also joined the ROTC, which led to a 30-year career as an Air Force Reserve officer. He retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel after a 30-year career doing that. Started that at Howard. He also took up really intramural boxing. He took up boxing but for exercise and all, and ended up joining the local Golden Gloves, and very quickly made got really a whole reputation in the mid-Atlantic states, to the point where, as the 1948 Olympic team was being chosen, he was asked to go to the trials. He went to the trials, and it was actually in Boston, the finals, and made the finals, and he was chosen as an alternate on the 1948 Olympic team. He had only had 7 official bouts at that time. In the back of the book, I list all of his bouts. There's in the references, and so he ended up going to the Olympics. There is the U.S. 1948 U.S. Olympic boxing team on their way to London for the Olympics. Now realize that this is just right after World War II. London wasn't set up as they do Olympic cities these days. They really didn't have anything called an Olympic village. They had leftover bungalows and parts of neighborhoods that they just put all the Olympic athletes on. But they had a record turnout from all over the world for that Olympics. And Norvel himself, who's he's the back left in that photo. Norvel himself became a networked, met a lot of people there, including the coach of the Canadian Olympic team, who then invited him to participate in some boxing matches up in Canada that they hold. There's a couple chapters that are based in Canada regarding that. So Norvel comes home from those 1948 Olympic Games, and he comes back down here to Boudilier County to talk to his family, share his stories and all. And they had cousins in the area. They had cousins over in Covington. He went over to see them one day, and he got on the train in Covington to come back to, there's a short train ride, maybe 10, 15 miles from Covington to Clifton Forge, and sat down in a train that had maybe 4 or 5 people in it. He just took a seat, but the seat happened to be in the white section of the train, and he was arrested for sitting in the white section. The court, he appealed the case, and I looked it up with this State Supreme Court of Virginia and got the records from it. It was a 78-page document. I read through it, and the testimony and the whole background of the case was compelling. It motivated me to, well, for one thing, his attorney that appealed the case was a partner with the same law firm that had the Brown versus Board of Education case go to the Supreme Court. So that made me curious about how that involvement happened. And so I went to Howard University, sat in their archive library, went through some wonderful material that they had there. They were very supportive of the effort. And then I went over to the Library of Congress and sat in their manuscript room where the NAACP archives are kept, and went through some spectacular documents that are housed there. But I couldn't really find too much on this case. So what I decided to do was make this case the prologue of the book. And so the testimony that's in that prologue is taken directly from this case. And I don't want you to think that this is just a book about boxing. There's romance involved in this book as well. And Robert Jackson introduced Norvel to his sister Leslie. And by now, Norvel Ebony magazine had found Norvel and did a expose on him. And they had, so they took this picture of Norvel Leslie driving around Washington, D.C. Norvel at that point was the national AAU boxing champion, heavyweight boxing champion. And so they dated and got married. And they got married at the Howard University campus at the Andrew Rankin Chapel there on that campus. There's Leslie in her wedding gown. So while those of you that might not follow amateur boxing has an event called the duels meet. And what they do is they take the national AAU heavyweight champ, or all the weight classes, the national AAU champions from each weight class, and they send them on matches against European countries. Here's Norvel, who was the national AAU heavyweight champion, and next to him is John Boudilier, who is the national AAU's light heavyweight champion. And they became friends during this. And in 1951, they went to Europe together for this tour. I had the great, one of the exciting things that happened in this event is I reached out and found John Boudilier's, or Boot as he was referred to. I found his daughter, Lisa Tejas, in California. And when we were out there, Lisa opened up her father's archives and contributed greatly to the story of the book, especially the chapter on that duels tour. And we found this fabulous treasures there. And I don't know if she's watching today or not, but she may be. Later on, after the book was out, we had a book event here before the pandemic hit in Boudilier County. And Danielle, Norvel's granddaughter, came down from Maryland, and Lisa came out from California for that particular event. And there they are together. So this is, Lisa supplied this photo, which is on the Queen Elizabeth and going for the 1951 duels tour in Europe. And you can see Norvel on the left, John Boudilier on the right. I was told by Lisa that John had a big personality. And so that you can see some of that here on the signatures on the back. You can see everybody sign their name. The third one is Norvel putting down Howard University. The one before that is simply Boot, B-O-U-T, and that's John Boudilier. And here was the last match of that particular duels tour. It was held in Gothenburg, Sweden, and Norvel's opponent in that fight was a young Ingemar Johansson. Now, some of you may recall that Ingemar Johansson was in the late 50s, early 60s, a prominent heavyweight boxer, and he and Floyd Patterson had some memorable matches together. But here, Norvel is taking on Ingemar, and Norvel won this particular bout. All of Gothenburg was excited about this. You read the newspaper articles and all, the stadium was jammed just to see this particular bout. So Norvel was the AAU national heavyweight champion. He was again selected for the U.S. Olympic team for those 1952 Olympics. And you can imagine that in 1952, which these were held in Helsinki, Finland, what was going on in the world in those days. Finland is right next to the Soviet Union. This was just the start of the Cold War. And yet the entire world came together in Helsinki to hold these particular Olympics. We have the book contains several two chapters on these Olympics. There's lots of stories that came out of these, and I encourage you to read those chapters. It's a part of history that's been a little bit lost, but it's really important and has implications for today. And furthermore, Norvel made history at these games. This time when he came from the Olympics, he wasn't arrested for anything. He came home and was invited to the White House for a luncheon with other prominent athletes. Norvel, you can see Norvel standing right behind President Dwight Eisenhower. Off to the right, you'll see the boxer, Rocky Marciano. Next to him is Joe DiMaggio. And actually right next to DiMaggio on the other side is the golfer, Gene Sarazen. And there's other prominent athletes in this photo. So Norvel, after his boxing career, he graduated from Howard University. He went into education. He went on to his first job that really served as his platform for the rest of his career was teaching at the National Training School for Boys in Washington, D.C. While he went on from there to other institutions, he became a leader and administrator in the Washington, D.C. area. And all that time, he and Leslie were involved in mentoring, involved in community services, community outreach programs. And Leslie herself, one of her big causes was making sure libraries were accessible to all people in all parts of Washington, D.C. But Norvel, on the other hand, that experience at the National Training School set him up for lifetime experiences. He met two people there, two other teachers there that during their lunch break would sit around and play the card game Pinochle. I had heard from the family that there was a Pinochle game that went on at the house that they remembered. Well, what had happened is these two guys and a bunch of other guys started this Pinochle game at the National Training School, and they played Pinochle together for 40 years. And they each one of them became prominent in their own fields. There were military people, there were educators, there was, but they became very, very close and fast friends. And I had the opportunity of interviewing one of them. Darren gave me a call and said, "I've found one of the Pinochle players." So I went up to Washington, D.C. and sat down with Mike Mahalik and interviewed him for 3 hours and heard wonderful, wonderful stories about Norvel Lee.
Ken,
Yes.
Tell us some more about the National Training School for Boys.
Oh, that's interesting. This was a federal facility in Washington, D.C. for really juvenile delinquents that were put into this program. These were troubled kids, and in fact, this photo here, which served as the book cover, it was taken at the National Training School, and the teachers were responsible for still trying to get them their high school education and try to straighten out their lives and all. And it really set Norvel up for those, for being involved in those efforts later on in life. But it was a federal facility. I'm not sure there is something like that on the federal level now, but I think states have taken over that responsibility.
That's amazing. For Norvel to be in World War II, come back, go to Howard University. I mean, ROTC, this is quite a career. And
yeah.
Was he never really noticed until Ebony magazine did an article?
Well, the Ebony magazine article really came out fairly early, 51, 50, but he was noticed there. But Norvel himself, his personality was really, let's just go on to the next thing. That's what I heard from the family. So I always had the next thing. There was not a lot of self-promoting on his part. And because the Times, he wasn't noticed here in Virginia as well because of his accomplishments. So it was just the Times, and I'm not sure that was his interest to be recognized, but his interest was to give back and help promote other people.
Well, he was a fantastic role model. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions right now. You can.
Okay, but I can add to that. He's also a tough taskmaster, because he's been driving this book since the beginning, you know, and not for real, but I just felt like that this story needed to be told. So one of the I had mentioned his younger brother George. I mentioned his younger brother George, who went into the military service, and when he came out, moved up to Washington, D.C., and took up boxing for a short while. This is a photo of Norvel coaching George. One of the most moving events I had in this journey was happened a couple years ago now, was when I met with the family and George, because I wanted to see what kind of stories he had to tell about growing up here in Boudilier County. And you can see from this photo, the three women on the left are Norvel's granddaughters. He also had a grandson, Ricky, who I've been in communication with. But here are the three granddaughters. And on the left is Darren, in the middle is Tiffany, and on the right is Danielle. And then standing next to me is Ken. Ken is George's son. And I'm in touch with all of these people to this day. Anyways, so we went up there and met with George. And George, I had a lot of questions for him. George told stories of growing up here in Boudilier County, of his family life. And it's such an engaging afternoon to spend with the family and with George. And one of the things he did was, and one of the mysteries I had was exactly where their family home was here. And the family home is on Big Hill Road in northern Boudilier County. It was there. And that was, so the Roanoke Times, inspired by the book, came out with an editorial in April. Olympic gold medalist and civil rights pioneer from Boudilier needs a historical marker. This same editorial was also published in the Richmond Times-Dispatch and a couple other newspapers here in Virginia. And this is a very rural part of the world. I know many of you don't know this area, but if you look at a map, if you see where I-64 goes from I-81 across the state to West Virginia, just below that is Clifton Forge is where this area is, just south of Clifton Forge. So, but what we've been able to do is now locate the family home. There's the site of the Rising Mount Zion Baptist Church there, and just maybe a couple proposed locations along the main road there to establish a historical marker. The person that's leading this effort is the former mayor of Roanoke, Nelson Harris, and there's some donations are being collected by the Boudilier County Historical Society for the plaque itself. And so that was just really kind of a top level view of the adventure that I've been on personally, and some of my close friends and all that kind of watched the progress here. That really resulted in this book. So I'm looking forward to answering any questions people have, or talking more, and really getting out and doing some book tours. Tomorrow I'm on Chat and Spin Radio, which is a UK radio station, for a short interview. On Saturday, I'll be at a bookstore doing a book signing. So it's been a great adventure, and I think with this time leading up to the Olympics will be a good time to just try to get the word out. I appreciate all of you listening in, and we'll appreciate you talking the book up with others.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ken. You can stop sharing.
Okay.
Now, you talked about upcoming events. For those of you on Facebook and watching on YouTube today, the links to Ken's website are in the comment section. There's also links to his book there. Um, Ken, I know you do book signings. Can people get in touch with you?
Yes,
Your website?
yes, they can send me an email at ken@kennethfconklin.com.
Okay. And do you do virtual visits as well as in-person visits?
Yes, yes, I will.
That's terrific.
Mhm.
This has been quite a journey. How long did you say it took you to do this?
Well, this was August of 2016 when the story just got my attention. I really didn't decide I was going to write a book till November when we got together with the family. And then much of 2017 was involved with gathering information and data. I wrote some draft chapters here and there. I did write the prologue and the epilogue first. They booked into the book, if you will. And so I did that first, and then I didn't write the story chronologically. I also worked with a developmental editor, Leslie Wells. She is out of New York, and she helped develop helped me with the story putting together. So and so that took some time and went through several drafts, as we all go through, and had early readers read it and made some other edits, and finally got to this point where we could publish it. So I think the screen has frozen here, Kathy.
Yeah,
okay.
We're back. And this is your first novel, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I had been thinking about writing a book, and I had several subjects in mind. And then this one, when it got to my attention, just slammed me. It really screamed at me that it needed to be told.
It's an amazing story. I noticed from your biography, your bio, that you have traveled quite a bit in your career, and that gives you some experience to fall back on when you're writing too.
It does. It really does. You just get a feeling of how people live around the world and what motivates them. And quite frankly, it's all pretty much the same, but you almost have to get that experience at other places. So I've traveled throughout Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, places like that, doing technology business, but always paying attention to what was going around and trying to connect with those particular areas.
That's valuable experience. And for those of you watching, Ken just recently won a Next Generation Indie Book Award, which is very prestigious. And I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Next Generation Indie Book Award people for that recognition, for the recognition of Norvel, an American hero.
Well, it's a wonderful book. Do you have a new project you're working on?
Oh, what a great question. I actually have all these years I've been writing and traveling and all. I've also been writing poems. And so I had a whole collection of scraps of poems around that will be published here. Actually, I think they'll be out in the next few days. So I'll have a book of poems out. It's called The Zen of Ken. And then the other thing, and then I do have a couple other books in mind. This book itself has tons of spin-off stories that need to be told, but I may move on to something else as well. So I have snippets all kind of going at this point in time. Getting the word after the Olympics are through, I'll have more time to focus on what's coming next.
Well, that's good to hear. I think that you should definitely continue your writing career. We always ask authors when we have them on Zoom in the book, who do you read? What kind of books do you enjoy reading? And do you have any mentors that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I really enjoy reading. You can see behind you here, we have quite the extensive library. This is not our only bookshelf. I have always enjoyed, I enjoy novels. I do enjoy historical, nonfiction historical books as well. But over the years, I've enjoyed Jim Harrison, for instance, and Larry McMurtry, and also just some John le Carre, and some books like that. I'm currently reading just a fabulous book that didn't have my attention at the time. It's 1986 Book of the Year Award, called Arctic Dreams by Barry Lopez. And it is as beautiful of a book as I've ever read. And it's about, you would think exploring the Arctic wouldn't be that poetic, but it's just wonderful, wonderful stories in there. Also Isabel Allende, and enjoy those kinds of books. As far as mentors go, I've enjoyed going to author talks and listening to them talk, and book signings. John Irving's another author we read.
It is great experience for authors to go to conferences and get to meet those who like to do what you like to do. It does, and it's a great networking opportunity too.
It is. I participate in the Roanoke Roanoke Writers Group here.
That's great. Those are very helpful. So now you've written your first book, and you did a ton of research. What advice do you have for other authors, or tips to help them with research and how to get started?
I think the first thing is to have passion for what you're doing. The research journey that I went on for this book was it was strong curiosity. It never felt like work. It felt like that something I just had to do and write about. And for any authors, and people know this, I mean, the secret to writing is to write. And so so I hear about people having writer's block and procrastinating and all that. And I just say, just do it. Just go and write. That first draft may not look good at all. You'll have to go back and change things around. It's fortunate we have word processors these days, and it's easier to do. So that would be my advice. And to enjoy enjoy the experience.
Technology has been a big boon to writers.
Yes, it has, including being able to do this.
Yes, Zoom into Books was born out of the pandemic, as have been a lot of new books. As you started yours during the pandemic, didn't you?
No, I didn't. This was 2016. So
yes, that's right.
Yeah. So this was, and really when that article came out from the Boudilier County Historical Society, that was in the middle of the Olympics that were going on in Rio, or those Olympics. So and that story came to mind. It came because somebody up in northern part of the county brought the story to the Historical Society, and they took it to the Fincastle Herald. So sometimes these stories just surface when it's time for them to surface.
That's true. We do a lot of big events, national events, and we have a book coming out that someone came to the table to meet the author, and they were looking for someone to write his story. So you never know where ideas come from, whether it's from newspapers, magazines, or just being on the road.
Right.
Now that the pandemic things are opening up, I know that we are doing in-person events. I know the Indie Book Awards had to have a virtual reception again this year.
Yes, I watched. Yes. Yeah.
Next year it will be in person at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. during the American Library Association conference.
Oh,
so we hope people can join us there. Headline Books will have a booth. So when is your poetry book coming out? Do you have a release
What-
date?
Um, I've been going back and forth with the publisher, and he has informed me it'll be in the next 2 or 3 days.
Terrific,
Yeah.
terrific. Well, link Zoom into books to your announcement, and we
I
will
will.
share your post.
I will. I will do that.
Well, Ken, I want to thank you so much for coming on Zoom into books. And you can get in touch with Ken through his website. The links are posted. And you can also meet all the Zoom into Books authors at zoomintobooks.com. And we release new YouTube videos every week. So if you would like to subscribe to the Zoom into Books YouTube channel, it's free. And there's a lot of good content on there. So Ken, thank you again. Best of luck with your new book, and we hope to see you around soon.
Great. Thank you very much, Kathy. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everybody for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.